Hey everyone, this is V,
And Alina?
and we wanted to just, take a moment real quick to alert you that this month's episode will include conversations around suicide ideations and prevention. We know that suicide has impacted so many of us in the LGBTQ community, and we want to let you know we're here.
Absolutely. So, if you or someone you know is in a crisis, there are folks always available to help you. You can call or you can text 988, and that is a suicide and crisis lifeline. They're available 24/7 to help you, so do not hesitate to use that resource. We hope everyone finds light and hope in these trying times. We love you so much, Queer Kittens.
Deep love, deep love.
Welcome to Quest, a journey to wellness. My name is V, aka Vanessa. I'm a two-spirit human, joy influencer, energy worker, and dad joke connoisseur. All pronouns accepted.
And my name is Alina. I use she, her pronouns. I am a cat lady, queer, your empirical evidence bae, and I like to keep it funky, 420, and am often guilty of romanticizing.
Come on a quest to find out what wellness really means. You'll hear stories from queer folks and allies who've successfully taken their happiness and well-being into their own hands by examining what they have found helpful along the way.
If you're curious about wellness, this is our open platform for queer stories, interesting science, and other folks' alternative wellness practices.
We hope this podcast brings you joy, where you'll learn, laugh, heal, and grow.
Well, hello there, queer kittens. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time. It's nice to hear your earballs. I don't know how the earballs thing there works, Alina. Here we are now into episode 6, and we've been getting so much feedback from different folks. And for those of you that don't know, I work in the Castro at a bar called the Midnight Sun. It's a gay bar, like it's pretty much a bear bar. And for you that don't know what a bear is, it's a husky man that looks intense but is just a big old teddy bear. That's the best way for me to explain it. Basically, this sweet bear came up to me and he said that he listened to like 10 minutes of one of the episodes. We didn't really get into which episode because, the craziness of being in the middle of a bar. But he told me he listened to 10 minutes of one of our episodes during his lunch break, and he started getting really emotional. And he was just like, you guys talking about authenticity, it really got me into a special place because that message that you guys are putting out there, we really stress about putting that out there for the youth, for the students. And it was just really special to be able to hear that. And he was like, and to hear your story, he was like, I had no idea. And to know that, he's like, I just have so much more respect and love for you. Knowing that, it made me think about just the power of sharing, how a lot of us are afraid to talk to each other about stuff, and especially those moments where we feel powerless. I feel like us sharing and talking with each other like almost brings power to a powerless moment. I had to take a pause on that because that felt deep. We're talking about some pretty heavy stuff.
It does and doesn't surprise me that like a 10-minute moment of Quest could be so just enough to ruminate on, to like take in, pause, ruminate. And it's just incredible. I'm truly fortunate to be part of the Quest podcast.
We are blessed to have you with us as well. I've also had people come in and saying that they start their day with us. And I'm like, that is
wow.
Amazing.
That is very high praise.
Yeah. Our goal is to have people feel a little less alone. And I think that we're doing that. It just brings so much emotions. I'm trying to keep it together. But it feels really nice to know that us doing this sometimes, it feels hard in the sense of like we are being vulnerable. We're being vulnerable and saying stories that we've never shared before, that we hardly share. And in that sharing, it's really making people feel even more part of a community and less alone and seen. Seen is a huge thing in our community. And speaking of seen, if you haven't seen our last episode, heard our last episode, we got to talk to actually one of our executive producers, Corey Houston, amazing human being, and you'll fall in love with them when you listen to that episode. We just chat about his constant quest through his shadows with radical self-acceptance, and it was just so good. Like, we didn't want to pack this interview and his interview all into one teeny episode, so we separated him into 2 episodes so you can get him and Anna, who is our guest on this episode that you're going to hear from later. This topic is just super impactful for our community. It just didn't feel right to just pack it all in one episode.
Anna Richmond is absolutely awesome. She is a clinical training and competency specialist at TLC, Child and Family Services. We'll definitely get into more details about all the awesome day-to-day stuff that Anna is doing with TLC. But yeah, I won't take too much time because Anna speaks incredibly awesome for herself. But what I will comment on is just truly just like one of the most amazing displays of this simultaneous strength and gentleness about her that I was just captivated by and moved by and still feel captivated and moved by to this day. So grateful that Nico Storment connected us with Anna. Truly just amazing resources that she gave us and perspectives that are just absolutely important and on the ground perspectives, right, with the youth. Anna was connected to us by Nico Storment, a community leader, LGBTQ plus community leader, in case you were curious. Nico and Anna are family, and no wonder Nico is such an amazing and awesome person, having grown up and being raised by someone as awesome as Anna Richmond. So thank you, Nico. We're so lucky to be connected to Anna. Yeah, it's been quite the reflective week for myself, and reflectiveness is good. Something I guess that's just been on my mind a lot is just the way, every individual sort of processes things differently. And there isn't a prescriptive way of mourning. There isn't a prescriptive way of dealing with growing, dealing with loss, overcoming things. Everybody kind of deals with these things a little differently. We do encourage folks to really check in on your loved ones. Keep in mind, it doesn't have to be this profound breakthrough moment. It could be just the little things, right? I love the way you and Leah have the tell me a dad joke, right? Because it kind of brings this sort of lightheartedness to moments that fucking suck and are hard. And I think that's super necessary. So thank y'all for being such an awesome example of that. And some folks, they take a little while to come around and ask for help or even formulate what they even need. Just be patient and be there for folks. And I think it's okay also to make calculated decisions, right? If you know you're not in a place, or if opening up is going to open you to some other stuff you can't deal with at the moment, that's okay. Practicing that self-awareness and wisdom is smart. That's good. It's going to help you not lash out or do things you don't mean. So, of course, if you notice somebody's not well or seems a little off or anything like that, always check in on them and let them know that you're there for them, and let them know it's no strings attached and there's no kind of just open the floor and let them say their bit, and you don't have to. I think sometimes and I do this a lot in attempts to be relatable, especially in our society that puts so much emphasis on work or success or being a good teammate or, being the best at this and that. It's easy to compare. And our awesome friend Corey, he got well into the spiral that is comparison. It's easy to compare, but you don't have to. Don't. In fact, it's probably best that you don't. Heal your wounds as you need to, and just be there for people. And silence, don't be afraid of that either. Let people's words breathe. That's okay too. Yeah, I think it's just a good practice to be like, okay, maybe I've gone through this before, but is it helpful to point out at this very moment? Maybe not. Let's see how the conversation goes and what nuggets of wisdom I could give to this person without diminishing what they're going through or passing it off as this thing that could easily be achieved and moved on from. But yeah, everybody's different. And we talk to folks who has had friends that needed to go and get their ass into the shower. And I've definitely needed that kind of people just showing up for me and making the things happen. And then sometimes you need a reflective week, and don't be afraid to explore that and figure out what you truly need in the moment.
Yeah, and sometimes it's okay, if you don't know exactly what you need, sometimes that's okay. And the whole thing about Tell Me a Dad Joke between me and Leah, our producer, is that we both suck at asking for help from people we love. And when we're in really dark places, we're both really, really good at disappearing and isolating so tough that it's actually toxic for ourselves. Either we isolate, or not either, it's mostly a combination of both, that we isolate so hard that when we're not working, we're just numbing ourselves with TV or something. But when we're not numbing ourselves with TV or being away from people, we're burying ourselves in work and numbing ourselves with work. We found a fun little thing that maybe you could do with people that you're close with. Just find a cute little safe word of hey, I feel like shit and I need somebody. Because it's hard for those of you that are givers, it's hard to tell somebody that you don't feel well, that your mental headspace is kind of off. Sometimes you don't even understand why your mental headspace is off. It just feels off. And it's not easy to tell someone that, because us as givers, we're so used to being there for people. We're used to being the arm and the shoulder to cry on, that we get all awkward trying to figure out how to lay our head on the shoulder type deal. What me and Leah do is we just instead of saying, hey, my head is in a weird space, we literally just have our little code word of hey, can you tell me a dad joke? And immediately we both know. We don't ask any questions. We just find the best dad joke. And we just feel better knowing that somebody knows we're in that headspace. So we don't actually always talk about what's going on. We just feel better that somebody knows we're in a dark place. Thought I'd share that. So we don't want to take up too much more of this time. We really want to get to Anna and everything she has to say and all the resources she has to give. So now our feature presentation, Miss Anna Richmond.
Queer Kitties give a warm Quest Wellness welcome to Anna Richmond. We are so incredibly fortunate to chat with someone who has dedicated their career and truly their heart to helping others. Not only just helping them, but helping them through some of the toughest times life can throw at individuals and at families. So a quick bit about Anna. She is a clinical training and competency specialist at TLC Child and Family Services. A little side note, who doesn't love the music group TLC? So we're already off to a lovely, incredible start. Anna is a longstanding part of the Quest community. Anna, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on to Quest.
Thank you so much for having me, Alina and V.
It's funny because this episode touches a lot upon the just spectrum of like hope and despair that, an individual can go through. And I think there's something particularly like beautiful and special about finding some of the most beautiful moments in some of the like more challenging parts of life, and the way we commit to being in relationship with one another and support of one another is so awesome. It's just very cool to see. I would love to, hear more about clinical training and competency. And
clinical training and competency specialist, I joke with people and say that's just a really fancy way of saying I'm our agency's trainer. And it's also just some of my humility. But I do have many years of clinical experience being a therapist, being the clinical director here at TLC, Child and Family Services, running our residential program. And so it's such an honor for me these last 2 years to be TLC's trainer, because I get to work across the agency. And really, probably one of the most exciting things has been is it's opened up this space for me to do some specialty work with LGBTQ+. And our executive director has, for many years, tapped me on the shoulder when, a local business needed somebody to be a consultant to them when they had what they thought or assumed was their very first transgender employee, and they didn't know what to do with that, right? When we birthed Project Flare, which I hope to talk about a little later in the podcast, our CEO connected me with an agency in Oakland called Family Builders, and they had received this grant money to serve queer youth during COVID. That was, as you all know, super isolating time for everyone, but for LGBTQ+ youth who are already at so much higher risk for suicidality, it was just a game changer. And so the folks at Family Builders had created something called the Youth Acceptance Project. And so they kind of parlayed that into this grant called Navigating Home. And inside of that, I became one of several LGBTQ+ navigators. And I worked in Sonoma, Napa, and Solano County. So essentially, we just went and worked with LGBTQ+ youth, their families, social workers, schools, any kind of support that we could provide to make the youth's life better. We showed up for that. We did trainings. I'm about to do a training in January for a group of hairstylists in Sonoma County. We had a trans youth that was like, I don't have anywhere to get my haircut where I feel comfortable. And my colleague was going to drive them 20 miles up the road. And I was like, over my dead body, no way. Like, we have to have other places. And so that's what we started to do, is like, let's train agencies, other barbers and hairstylists to be LGBTQ+ affirming businesses. And then in that process, I've now got a real estate company that wants me to come in. So we're hoping it's going to just keep growing and blossoming. But my work as the trainer here just makes space for me to do this LGBTQ+ specialty.
What does TLC Child and Family Services do?
We do quite a bit, so I'll try to keep it short. We have a residential treatment program. We have a foster families and adoption program. We have a transitional age youth program that works with housing and preventing youth from being homeless. And we have a clinical program that works across at least 3 of those programs. So we have therapists who deliver services to the youth and families that we serve.
That's so incredible.
That's amazing.
Navigator really puts it quite perfectly, right? It's really just like being a life advocate and making sure, like, yeah, all these little things that, the cis straight community really takes for granted and, doesn't have to think very deeply about. There are so many more aspects and considerations for like folks who are part of our community. So thank you so much for like walking us through that and like, really outlining just even something as simple as getting a haircut, right? Something that should be plenty accessible, that becomes a whole, am I safe here? Under what context am I safe here? So that's so cool.
Getting a haircut without being misgendered or without being, talked into, why do you want to cut these beautiful girls, honey, when he is saying, this is how I want my haircut. It feels really powerful to be providing this training.
That's amazing. Like, I was trying to get a suit and get like a kind of a custom jacket, and they kept wanting to fit it to me as a female body. And I'm on like the trans spectrum. And I was like, hey, what I need you guys to do is do everything possible that you can make my figure look less feminine, not more feminine. And they're like, well, why? I don't understand. And I hated having to explain that to them. It was Men's Warehouse.
Oh my gosh.
So I guess I did wrong by walking into that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I could go on for days. All the things there alone.
I'm sure.
But in the end of the day, I explained myself, and the guy helped me out really well and got a cool jacket.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's worth noting, and it's no small feat of just how often, the queer community is like serving as like the constant like teaching space in the first touch point for so many people to just learn how to live in a social contract and like be nice and be thoughtful. Quick shout out to all of us out there, like with the patience and the kindness and love, because that shit's hard.
Thanks.
Yes, you especially. Let's definitely recognize the love and awesomeness that you provide to so many people, V.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. I love you so much. What's an exciting or one of the most exciting or encouraging aspects of your work, Anna?
Well, I was thinking a little bit before I came today about, what brought me to the word. The sort of bottom line is the ability to have an impact on these queer youth in particular, in ways that I didn't have that. But by the same token, this role as an LGBTQ plus navigator, it's so hard. Like, I've had to learn to have a poker face, because when you have a family, you have a mom and a dad who cannot accept who their child is. And I've worked with so many families that they don't understand it. They don't accept it. It's against their religion, you name it. And most of me just wants to scream about that, having a trans stepson. But as a clinician, as a therapist, I have training through the Youth Acceptance Project to really be with that family and just be right where they are and just like slowly build rapport with them and slowly drop little things into the bucket. And I don't need everyone to do that. In fact, I need the rest of you to not do that because, right, I think it's a little of both. They sort of need a little bit kind of in their face, but they also need at least some safe place where they can just say, I don't get it, or I can't call my daughter my son. I can't walk down and see all the pictures in my house. I can't understand it. It's not in me. And we believe in this training because we've seen it over and over again in the Youth Acceptance Project, which Vita Kavar is brilliant. America Eastless is one of her right hands. They run the Youth Acceptance Project in New York, Philadelphia, Ohio, California. And so they have the research to back it up that this works, that slowly being with these families and just being where they are and building that rapport and giving them the safe place. I remember one story, a mom, it just took her so long, where we thought it was about her accepting her daughter as a lesbian. What we eventually found out was it was really more about what was everyone else going to think? And was she going to lose her entire community over it? And she didn't emotionally feel like she could lose her entire community over this. And really, her daughter being a lesbian, she didn't care. But it was hard for her to articulate that and make sense of it and not feel the guilt and shame of having it be about her and her community and her emotional survival. So getting to work with folks and be someone who's steadfast in their most vulnerable moments, I'm getting emotional. Isn't that what we have needed as a queer community? Somebody to be there and be compassionate and loving and just, not judge us. It took a while for me to drink that Kool-Aid because I was like, oh, yeah, but I don't like people misgendering my son. I don't like people misgendering these youth I'm working with. I want them to get it. But, I didn't get a whole lot about my own queerness until I got it. I've been out my whole adult life, but not to the youth that I serve. And so I actually literally looked it up today. I did not come out to our youth until National Coming Out Day 2012. So it's like just over my 10-year anniversary. I was terrified to come out to the youth until my best friend, who I call Dr. Gender, who you're going to have on your podcast. They're amazing. Just sat me down with a couple of colleagues and they said, all right, Richmond, let's do this. Anna, what are you so afraid of? What is this for you? And then hearing them talk about what was potentially missing about these youth not having an ally, not having a mentor, not seeing themselves in someone that they loved and respected. And I came out that year and it changed my life.
Wow.
Never got the reaction I was afraid of and just allowed me to serve with all my heart instead of just one corner of it.
So amazing, and so glad you found the courage to do that. Just last year was the first time I met like a friend's elders. I guess I'm going to call you an elder if that makes you feel any type of way.
You can call me an elder. I am definitely an elder in this group.
Well, to be able to like meet an elder, I have a new partner last year, and she had family like aunts and uncles that grew up in Colombia and were gay and out in Colombia, and hearing their stories, I'm just like, holy moly, like to hear what people have gone through firsthand before us. It's amazing. And I can see why it took you the courage that it took you and the time that it took you to come out when you did, but I'm glad that you did. It kind of sparked a thought in my brain. Is like, you knew all these different things were happening, were going wrong, and needed to help. How did you like jump into exactly what it is that you do?
Well, I've been doing clinical work for so long that there's like a bunch of different answers to that. I'll never forget my first client was a 5-year-old little boy, and I didn't know that you could already have depression and be suicidal at 5 years old. That was like mind-blowing to me. And one day I worked at a children's day treatment center program. So essentially the youth went to school there, but they had access to individual, group, and family therapy. And this 7-year-old kid was throwing rocks at me, trying to hit me, kick me. And so I was holding on to him until another staff could come and help escort him away. Meanwhile, here comes my little 5-year-old client making a beeline for me. And he's got this cool little bomber jacket on, right? And all I could do is like grab him by the jacket and hold him at bay. But that little boy who had tried to harm himself, like seriously harm himself at the age of 5 years old, had so much resilience in him that he was willing to take on an adult who he perceived was maybe harming his little buddy. And I think that sealed the deal for me working with youth. And so I think that was my entry into working with at-risk youth. Years later, that moment of getting to, we literally built a closet door on National Coming Out Day. So people like went through the closet door and then, had a little sign, and folks came out about all kinds of different things. It wasn't just LGBTQ+. We had abuse survivors and people in AA. But the reaction from the youth when I walked through that door. So I'm getting emotional again.
It's okay.
Like watching them, their eyes light up, and go, no way. And I had one kid in the office one day just go, you have no idea. Wait a minute. Your partner works here. And I didn't even know that I had mentors. Again, just knowing how much that means to other people. And then knowing that, like you were saying earlier, Alina, straight people don't have to think about this stuff. And so being able to be a voice for our queer community, having grown up in a small, conservative, religious town where I was definitely closeted, I definitely did not come out until after college. I was raised very religious, very conservative, and my parents ultimately accepted me, but it wasn't an easy road. And so to now have that voice and to know that there are other youth out there who don't have a voice and who are terrified, I don't want people to have to be in their 30s before they get there. That's too late because now they've missed out on 15 years of being a mentor to somebody else.
Wow. I can only imagine just all of the worlds of possibilities that just open case by case, year over year, time over time. And it's so exciting. It's truly incredible. A lot of the, of course, subject matter that we're tackling in this episode is like so heavy, but I truly just can't stress enough how much like resilience and how beautiful and amazing folks really show up as in these really tough times.
The other big piece in, I think it was 2019, TLC, we wrote a grant, we got the grant, we got $10,000 to spend, and we created something called Project Flare. And it was intended as a way to create a legacy of visibility for LGBTQ plus foster and BIPOC youth. When the event happened, there were fires that threatened so many people's homes, and we had to literally decide, do we shut it down and try again? And everyone was like, no way. If you got to go, go. If your house is in danger, just go. And the rest of us hunkered down. And so we had a much smaller group that day, but we made these share your flare videos. And the videos were just intended for youth and parents and staff to talk about their experiences of coming out, what it means to be accepted. And the youth who participated that day who shared their stories, hopefully those stories will impact others. But what I got to see firsthand was the impact on those young people who somebody was asking them, tell me, how do you identify? Tell me, what does acceptance mean to you? And tell me, what's a flare? What's a signal? What's a message you want to send to some kid in Kansas or Arkansas or Ohio who needs to hear it? And they were forever changed by being able to have a voice and have somebody ask them those questions. So now we write that grant year over year. And so that's the workshop I'm doing in January is going to be an LGBTQ plus leadership workshop. We want to do some youth panel presentations because we'd really love to get more and more people to make these share your flare videos to get out into the world.
That's so cool. We will definitely have the Show Your Flare YouTube videos linked. And when in January might Share Your Flare Part 2 taking place?
We're hoping for January 14th. We've got to get a thumbs up on the venue, but hopefully that's going to be when that's going to happen.
Exciting. So cool. So definitely stay tuned for that, Queer Kittens.
Mentorship helped me get through a really rough time too. Larkin Street Youth Program was a big program that helped me being a homeless gay youth. They helped me out a lot. So to hear that you're doing this and trying to, help a lot more people even before that homelessness becomes an issue, like that's huge, like that they have people to turn to. I was so young. I didn't know anyone or know anybody older than me or even at my age that had it together that I could even ask help for until I got into Larkin.
Yeah, I've heard about Larkin Street for years. And again, like the ability to provide, hope and telling others, I see you, is such a powerful tool.
Yeah, it goes a long way. I can only imagine like every time someone gets emotional or just tells you that you saved their life, I'm sure with how dark it is, it keeps you coming back. It keeps you wanting to come back, motivated to continue this beautiful work that you do.
Well, unfortunately, I've had that experience. I've, worked with a young person who died by suicide, and they were just so tortured on their gender journey and their queer journey. Teens that have support are 93% less likely to attempt suicide if they just have support. And so for me, I can't go back and save that person, but how many more youth can I have even just one little piece in saving their life? Yeah, I want to sign up for that over and over and over again. Depression is, reduced by 71% just if folks use a trans youth's name or pronouns correctly at school and at home and at work. And that's huge. Those are huge numbers. So it's not like there's nothing we can do about this, epidemic of suicidality and self-harm in the queer community. We absolutely can change this, and we need to change this.
I think the other part that's so incredibly worth highlighting is that how easy it is. The stats are so clear of what needs to happen. Something as simple as identifying folks correctly goes such a long way. And I'm sure a lot of folks, I won't even necessarily pin it on, straight folks alone, maybe have trepidation or just have pause or put a lot of, I don't want to say excuses, but just, run a big old narrative in their head that prevent them from asking these questions. And I just urge hey, everyone deserves an umbrella of grace. You're allowed to fumble and be like, my bad, I've learned right now. Thanks so much, and keep it moving. So yeah, I just want to encourage everybody that, it may feel really difficult in the moment, but it's so impactful and worth doing and just goes such a long way. And we know for a fact that it goes such a long way.
I was kind of curious just because I know for myself going through darker times, it's not the easiest to reach out to your buddies and be like, hey, I'm feeling depressed, buddy. It's not the easiest. And for me and our producer of this show, she's my best bud, we just say, hey, tell me a dad joke instead of saying, hey, I'm depressed. But when we know certain people and we know something's going on, do you have any advice in the best way to kind of ask them without being offensive or forceful or how to be, I don't know, how to do it right, I guess? I don't know if there's a right way to do it.
I would say first and foremost, the only right answer is to not do anything, right? To shut down, to ignore it, because we know that doesn't work. And for many years, people held the belief that if you talked about self-harm, if you talked about suicidal ideation, it would actually increase the person's ideation. It would increase the chances that they might actually attempt. And that is unequivocally wrong. The research is really clear on that. Just asking questions, just being curious, but also paying attention not to just what somebody says, but how do they say it? I remember a time in my 20s when I was telling my friends I was fine. I was just, wanting to have some alone time. I don't ever want alone time. I'm a big extrovert. And I want alone time more now that I have children and, I'm an elder in the community. But in my late 20s, I was drowning with grief and loss and depression. And thank God my friends just didn't believe, the what I was saying. They were paying attention to how I was saying that. They were paying attention to my actions. It's an atypical behavior is sometimes just that. Sometimes it's a sign of anxiety. Sometimes it's a sign that something is really wrong. So just having your people pay attention to you and notice and go, hey, how are you, V? How's it going these days? Just something simple like that. And then slowly kind of saying, so that's the social answer. You got a deep dive answer for me? Is there, because oftentimes we ask yes or no questions instead of open-ended questions. And most of us want to talk about ourselves. And so if we just keep getting asked questions, it gets harder and harder to duck them and to hide. And I will say right now, as a therapist, as somebody who's been doing this work for so long, no one wants to die. No one. People desperately want to be out of the excruciating emotional pain that they're in, and they don't want to live like that anymore. But in all my years, for myself and any of my colleagues who've asked young people, if I could help you figure out a way to not be in this state of emotional darkness that you're in right now and to get you out of this pain, would you still want to take your life? And 100% of the time, maybe 99.9, they say, no, of course. And even the ones that say, no, I just don't want to live because I don't believe that there is a way. Okay, but are you willing to imagine for a moment that there is? What about then? And they said, well, yeah, of course. But it's not an of course, right? We don't know that. And so I think it's so important that we just ask the question. And then if it doesn't work for us, if your bestie isn't getting the answer out of you, your bestie knows 3 other people that she can ask to ask you that same question, right? Sometimes it's about a moment in time where we're finally ready to say, I need help.
I love the idea of like persistence, you know, especially if you can, after observing somebody you care about, notice that they're not doing, there's abnormal behavior or anything like that. Because I know I'm guilty of this. My brain tricks even me, honestly, tricks me most of the time. Like, I'll swear I remember this was put there or something or what have you, you know. Sometimes it kind of does take multiple friends or, you know, people who are just someone else who's also keeping track of your emotions, right? Because it's so easy to just get caught up in like every moment and everything that we face day by day. And, you know, the longer you know somebody, the longer that track record you get to have with them. And you're kind of able to be like, well, remember when you felt like this before? Or, you know, remember when we thought XYZ thing would never change, that we'd never, ever, ever see the day. And now we're living in a way different reality. Like, it stands to reason that things can change again, and holding steadfast to that stuff is huge, and it goes such a long way. It's truly
absolutely. And I mean, I have a friend, I always tease her. It's like, how do you know how I feel before I do? I can get on the phone with my friend Emily and she'll be like, what's wrong? And I'm like, what? Nothing. She's like, something's wrong. And I'm like, no, really. And in 5 minutes I'm crying and I'm like, how do you know that? Right.
That is so sweet.
I think there are subtle cues about how we project ourselves that are people, you know, that have known us for so long or so deeply. It doesn't even have to be longitudinal, right? It's not chronological. It's like, how deeply do you know someone? They know when your voice is at a different octave. They know when your pace or the cadence of your speech is off. They know when there's a little that, you know, we all know the knot in our throat. But some people can hear the knot in your throat before you can feel the knot in your throat. You got to keep reaching out to your people. And I would also say, asking someone, do you want to die? I mean, it's better than not asking anything. But again, because most people don't want to die, that's not the question. The question is, hey, are you struggling with thoughts of, you know, hurting yourself or harming yourself? Because that encompasses so much. That could be superficial scratching on your arm or leg all the way to an actual suicide attempt and everything in between. So it just creates a little more space in there.
Yeah, and I think just chatting about and just normalizing the notion that I think there's this feeling, you know, amongst broader society of like almost hard to touch or untouchableness around, you know, some of these topics. But it truly can be as simple as a superficial scratching or just like a nervous tick that someone takes on. I have definitely been guilty of and like have had homies that we definitely like check each other about this, where you're just like picking at yourself and then it just gets like worse and worse if you have like a, you know, scratch or something. And there's so many tiny little things, right? It encompasses so much, the idea of like self and like caring for self versus harming oneself. It doesn't always just look like the boldest and most obvious things that we think of. It's these little things every day. Maybe someone's going way super hard, you know, at the bar or something, and you're like, wait a minute, you're normally not one that goes this super hard. It manifests in all these like types of ways, and we got to destigmatize it because it's kind of more, like you said, an epidemic. It's kind of more common than we care to admit or realize. Meditating on the information that you gave us earlier about youth and like, you know, how simple of just having a mentor or any type of support makes worlds difference. Looking at other resources that are, you know, dedicated to suicide prevention, you realize that There isn't this like magic number where you turn a certain age and then suddenly life is so easy and you never doubt yourself again. Like that doesn't, that's not how it plays out. You know, it's a daily thing, and being attached to your community is also a daily thing. You got to stay persistent at it. Again, just so beautiful, like the steadfastness of our community particularly. And it's just, it blows my mind to think like all of this stuff affects people even outside of our community, right? So many folks are going to find this conversation and these resources helpful. Yeah, we're so much more similar than different.
Yeah, and if I can say something real quick, Alina, about destigmatizing suicide, it's also important that we take it seriously. You know, I've heard accounts of teenagers who say, I did tell my best friend, and he just looked at me and said, dude, what's wrong with you? You have a great life. Why the hell would you want to hurt yourself? That's ridiculous. You know, or somebody who's told, no matter how bad things are, you can't leave your kids or you can't leave your partner, you know, and it's like, that's not what somebody in the depths of depression and grief and loss and, you know, suicidality needs to hear. They need to hear, I've got you, I'm here, it gets better. They have to hear that hope because when I couldn't hold my hope for myself, I had my friends and my community to hold that hope for me. And sometimes we need that.
That's such an amazing piece of advice of like, hold the hope for that person. I think that there's often a knee-jerk reaction, especially like you mentioned growing up in like a more conservative household and mindset culturally. Same here, same with V, like we know how it is in that context. I always see the pattern of just this like tendency to want to apply guilt. Right? It's like when somebody's in a tough spot, they're like, well, what about your children? What about everyone that loves you? How are they going to feel? And like, if we could just really centralize and focus on like, in these moments, you need to hold hope for that person and not your knee-jerk reaction might be to point things out, but don't go there. Be that, you know, source and just say, I got you. I love you. Please tell me more about what you're thinking and feeling, like walk me through the thought process.
I sort of think of, you know, we have our gender journey, we have our queer journey, we have our coming out journey, right? And I think many of us have a mental health journey. Again, it's the same. It's we need to be seen and loved through that journey. You don't even have to understand me. You don't even have to get it. Can you just see me and love me? And be willing to be one of my people and hope that I get out on the other side and still want you to be one of my people. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Healthy boundaries. We're all about it.
Definitely. Well, the question I was going to ask was that you had a moment where your friends and community came and saw you and brought you through it. I don't know if you're comfortable with it, but would you want to talk more about that?
Oh, wow. It's funny. I don't talk about this much, but I'm an open book. So I'm happy to talk about it, especially if it serves someone. It was so long ago. I just remember the act of them coming to my house and literally saying, you are getting in the shower. And literally lifting me up and putting me in my shower. I don't even remember much more about it because, I mean, I eventually, you know, I got into therapy. I did antidepressants for a short time, which as a therapist is a great thing because I have walked in places where my clients have walked. But that's the one thing that all these years later, that's what I remember is just that simple act and how deeply that impacted me. And it's funny because when these two friends of mine who did that, when they got married, one of the things that I said to them in my toast was about how fiercely loyal they are. And for me, there's so many moments that they have, you know, shown that, but that was probably the moment that cemented that feeling for me about them was that act. And I don't even know if they remember it. You know, I mean, I remember it because I was on the brink of disaster. But
That's so awesome. Oh man. It encourages me, and I, I'm saying it to myself, and I'm, saying it to all of our Quest kittens, like, be so bold. Be so bold as to love people, and to just be like, I see you need this, and I'm going to just do it for you because I fucking love you. And like, that's okay. Like, that kind of behavior is so needed and welcomed. And we're an anxious people these days, particularly. Wow, that just like lights such a fire in my heart to be super bold about like the folks I love, and just, yeah, let it all hang out.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's hard to talk about. I can feel it, and I appreciate you sharing it.
well, and thanks for asking. I don't talk about it because mostly people don't know about it, so people don't know to ask, right? And it's also what made me just fall in love with Quest when I listened to your podcast for the first time, because all of the things that you're talking about are things that the queer community needs to hear and youth need to hear, but people in positions of influence and power need to hear about these things, because we need more services. We need people to step up and provide so that we can be talking. I want to be talking about something so different a decade from now, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be talking about suicide anymore. I don't want to be talking about how people can't get our pronouns right and how it's not proper English, even though they're wrong. You know what I mean? It's like, I want us to be somewhere so different. So I so respect and appreciate and love the work that you guys are doing. I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Truly. That is so sweet. On the topic of resources, like, are there any favorites that, come to mind that, you want to shout out?
I do have favorites. I mean, obviously, I will admit my bias. Project Flare, which is TLC Child and Family Services, LGBTQ plus contribution to the world, is near and dear to my heart. People can log on to tlcforkids.org and go under our community projects. And there's also a link to the YouTube page. And there's literally instructions for how people can make their own Share Your Flare video. We want to hear from so many people. We just want to light it up. Also, the Youth Acceptance Project that I mentioned earlier, that it was sort of birthed by Family Builders, the organization in Oakland. The work that Youth Acceptance Project is doing in California and in other states is the only evidence promising practice that's out there to work with LGBTQ plus rejecting families. The only one. Like, that's crazy to me in 2022 that we have one model of training for how to do that. But I would love for people to check that out, and become trained or bring that training to their agency. And then we have a really small agency. I say small, there's only 11 of them, and yet the work they do is all over the world. It's called Community Matters. They have this Safe School Ambassadors program. They teach youth how to be upstanders when it comes to bullying, and they're really starting to focus on LGBTQ plus resources. But they're just a fantastic organization who's trying to help a generation of youth learn how to stand up to people who are bullying trans youth or queer youth, or making it hard for gender non-binary or gender expansive youth to just be okay at school and have a place for themselves that's safe and supportive. And so I love those guys too.
That is so awesome. Y'all need to check out these links in the show notes and definitely submit your Project Flare. The instructions are on there. Yeah, let's light it up.
Well, there's also one big question we always ask all of our guests. What's one word or mantra or phrase that describes wellness to you?
Oh, gosh. If you could see a map of my brain right now.
Yeah. I wish we could.
If you could see a map of my brain, it's like, for me, the first thing that came up was laughter. Like, I think laughter is so underrated and so important. And for me, being in the service of others, and for me, those go together, because the youth that I work with, for years, I've called it Anna's F word. My F word, the teenagers I work with know, means fun. I don't want to be in therapy group that's not fun. I don't want to do anything that's not fun. And so for me, laughter and fun is a way to be in the service of others, because that is all about building community. And how can you be well if you don't have community? How do you do self-care if you don't have community? So
100%.
I know that was more than one, but that's what I got.
It's fantastic.
We love it.
Something that was coming up while I was listening to all of y'all speak, and just what I was thinking about was that the youth don't have a lot of things. Well, I think maybe now they do because of all of social media and all that stuff that they could numb their brains with. But what I was thinking is like, when we were youth, we didn't have much to numb our emotions. So we were like deep in them, where now as adults, we work and work and work and numb the crap out of ourselves with work. I just wanted to commend the work that you do with youth, because youth doesn't have something that's bringing them monetary value to themselves, that where adults are like, my worth is based on how much work I put out, where youth, they're just going to school. And you know that it doesn't matter. I mean, some of them are like, oh, if I get straight A's, that's my self-worth. But some don't really care about that. You know, there's not as an easy road for youth to numb themselves as adults do.
And really, V, I mean, that's one of the things we're hoping to do. And it's such a small piece of the puzzle, but doing an LGBTQ plus leadership workshop, they're not supposed to know this, but we're going to pay them to participate. We want to continue to go for funding that will allow us to pay youth to use their expertise, right? There's so much expertise amongst our youth. We need their voices out in our communities, in schools, in businesses. I don't have to go teach the realtor company. I could take 3 young people with me, and they're going to, blow the roof off way better than I am. And hearing it directly from youth, I think, hits adults in a different way too, because it's like, oh, that could be my niece, my nephew, my son or daughter. Yeah, giving them things to do that are about empowerment, but not just any empowerment of their self-worth, and specifically their self-worth around who they are. There's a quote that I talk about in a training I do at work for suicide. The quote goes like this. It's Dr. Israel Orbach. He says, it's not enough to love the suicidal patient. It's not enough to give them hope. It's not enough to change the external environment. You must deal with changing the self-destructive processes, the inner patterns that erode the self and mental well-being. And for me, that comes in the form of homophobia and transphobia. Our youth need outlets to combat all of that, because if they don't, there is all that self-destruction in there. So yes, we want to ask them, but what else, right? We want to be good community members and good friends and ask our people. But I'm trying to look at it from a bigger picture too, systemically in schools and in mental health treatments. And how do we change our youth's experiences of internalized homophobia and transphobia so that they're not thinking that self-harm is an answer? And I think keeping them busy is a good thing. Something productive.
For sure. It's so thoughtfully and just like wonderfully designed, right? It's like so much prevention, getting ahead of, these situations before they're allowed to happen, like empowering young people, like, and showing them you are an expert, you can be a thought leader in the room, it doesn't matter what the room is. That's so rad. I keep saying it's so cool because it is. It's so cool.
And they need to know that.
Oh, yeah. I can't even imagine being a kid being like, okay, you're going to go and teach adults something because they need to get it together.
Yeah, definitely. More of that.
I wonder what I would have been like if I had taken that.
I was playing the pronoun game, right? I wasn't thinking I was any kind of expert. I was just trying to play the pronoun game when they were asking me about, who I was dating, and like, I want to slip up and let them know my partner is a she.
Oh, man.
And no need to hide about that now.
In the clear since 2012. Anna Richmond, thank you so much for your incredible work. And kittens, we have a really cool resource guide that Anna made for us that will be linked in the show notes. It has a list of safe havens for folks to get help for yourself, for someone that you love, anyone who's in crisis. These resources are available for you, as well as some amazing other projects that Anna had mentioned that were going on. You can get involved with them too.
Anna is an amazing human. I was so shocked. I was like, let me take that back. I was not shocked because Nico is such an amazing human, and to see and meet and like really conversate with somebody that was such a huge part of Nico's life. I'm not surprised why Nico is so amazing, because this woman, I'm like at a loss of words. I'm like, amazing, incredible, all of that like doesn't even encapsulate her essence. Like oh my gosh, she had me laughing, she had me crying. I'm sure if y'all made it this far, she did the same to you too. Hearing all the work that she does, it makes me want to get more involved. Make all spaces safe spaces for all of us. More spaces, safe spaces for us. You know, like she just is so inspiring. I just really want to get involved. And the team here at Quest, we're going to get involved. We're going to make our own Flare video in January. So keep your eyes peeled. Keep your eyes open on checking all social media, Instagram, TikTok at Quest Wellness Pod. So keep an eye out.
Show your flair, fam.
Also, I feel like it's kind of been a theme that I've been leaving y'all with some quotes, and I'm going to drop this one right here. Love is like a fart. If you have to force it, it's probably shit. You know, the thing about us Latinos, we always make jokes about everything. So I hope that you leave this episode in good spirits and feeling love.
We have so much more to explore and share with you on our podcast, and we hope you follow us in our quest to wellness. Tap that follow or subscribe button to get every episode as soon as it's released.
And we'd love to get your feedback also. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a rating and review. It only takes 30 seconds, but this really helps us to know what resonates and how we can help you.
All right, goodbye, she's, he's, theys, gays, and allies.
I love that.
This podcast was produced in collaboration by Kanoko Chocolates and Puka Puka Creative.
And executive producers Stevie Kwa and Corey Houston.
Producer, writer, editor, and sound designer, the amazing Leah Jackson.
And associate producer Rafaela Lendestoy.
Original music was produced by Basque. He is an amazing musician, and he's also our cousin, third amigo. Let's go. Boo, 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 boo.
And we can't forget the emotional support by Frankie, Ruby, the Braithwaite Kittens, and Pukalani.